Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Wellness Watch podcast. My name is Dr. Lauren Carroll. I'm a physician executive. Welcome. Welcome to the Wellness Watch podcast. My name is Dr. Lauren Carroll. I am a physician executive, a speaker, and a wellness expert. I love speaking on all things health, all things wellness, and all things leadership. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about management. Are you a bad manager? And a lot of times, bad managers don't know that they're bad managers. Now, I've had a time or two where I've been under bad leadership. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We're not going to talk about specifically what those bad leaders did. I'm going to focus on how I felt during those situations. I felt frustrated. I felt tired. I felt overwhelmed. Now, that might be some of y'all today. You feel frustrated with your life. You feel overwhelmed. You might feel even mentally, emotionally, and spiritually tired. Why is that? And I'm going to say something that some of you guys might not like. You may be a bad manager of your own life. You may be a bad manager regarding your own health and wellness. And unfortunately, your bad management is not just affecting you, it's affecting everyone else around you as well. But today, we're going to put an end to the bad management. We're going to get delivered from those situations. We're going to get delivered from the bad boss, which is ourselves. Now, I'm not telling you anything today that I did not have to walk through myself, all right? So I am a partaker of the information that the Lord gave me today as well. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18. And it says, where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he. Let's focus on that first part. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Now, just like when you're underneath bad leadership, and if you've been a bad leader before, let's be honest, right? We're all growing in our leadership. There was no vision cast probably in those situations. You were just moving through the motions or going through the actions. That's probably why you felt so frustrated, especially if you had someone who was micromanaging you. It seemed like you could not see the whole vision or get the big idea and the greater idea. That's what happens when we don't have a vision for our life. We don't have a vision of how our health and wellness really interconnects with every area. That's why we're feeling so bad. And honestly, the only way that we can get a true productive vision for our life is going to God, reading his words. God does not want you to live a life in frustration. He said he wants you to have life and that life more abundantly. And so if you're not living that life, you feel like you're not living that life in abundance. I didn't say it was going to be perfect. I didn't say you weren't going to have trials and tribulation because the word does say you will have that. But if you feel like you are not living the God kind of standard of life that he's put in his word, then that means that you are not managing or stewarding what he has given you. Like, this is a hard talk. I know. This is a kind of like we need to come to Jesus with some of these things in our life if we want change. Like, if you want to stay the same, if you're okay running around in circles, if you're okay not achieving your goals, if you're okay with running into obstacles over and over again, if you're okay with not feeling good, if you're okay with not moving the needle, corporate terms, if you're okay with not moving the needle in your life, then you can disregard what I'm saying. But if you're trying to improve, if you're trying to change, if you're trying to do all that God has called you to do, that means we've got to deal with these management issues. So let me put this in practical terms. One concept that really helped me was work-life harmony. And I say work life harmony as opposed to work life balance. Because in the past, that's what I was trying to have. I was trying to have balance in my life, meaning I was trying to give equal strength to all things in my life at one time. I was stressed, y'all. I was stressed. But the concept of work life harmony means that you might have different things going on in your life, all important, but some things more need more attention. Some things need more priority. That means if I'm prioritizing certain things at certain seasons, at certain times, I'm not feeling bad for those things I'm not putting so much attention to. The word harmony actually means pleasing combination. How many of you guys have sat through just a wonderful choir singing in harmony? My God, it's like the best thing ever. Now, let me think. Now, how many of you guys have ever sat through a choir singing in harmony? It's such a blessing. And if their hearts are right, the anointing just comes down and it just falls, right? But think back to when you listen to people who are not singing in harmony. And it's usually that person that is flat, that is off. They don't even hear themselves that they're not in harmony with the other people that they're singing with. And that's how your life is sometimes. When we're not walking or we haven't established work life harmony, you're off. You might even feel you're off, but you keep on going through the motions. But here's the thing, everybody else around you can see the manifestation of your offness. I don't know if that sounds correct, but whatever. Everyone else around you can see that you are off, but you're too busy trying to keep up appearances that you just gonna go on because you don't want to change, because change hurts. Sometimes there is a depression that comes with change. Change can be hard, but change is necessary. Improvement is necessary. And honestly, sometimes I think that people's, honestly, sometimes I think that and honestly, sometimes I think that people's worst enemy is their addiction to comfort. Their addiction to comfort. This is what I've known. I'm comfortable. If I try to grow in any way, that's going to mess up my comfort level. And some people are comfortable with dysfunction. Some folks are comfortable with living lives that are not in harmony at all. So if I'm talking to you and you're that way, you can listen, but if you're not going to take up the things that I'm saying, if you're not trying to improve, I don't know how fruitful this will be for you. This podcast will be for you. But if you're of the nature of I need to change something, I can't go on like this. I need wellness in my life. I need to walk in health. I need to do and be who God has created me to be. Then keep on listening. And I'm not saying that I got it all together, but this is something that I've had to work on for my own peace, for my own. And I'm going to tell you, work life harmony is achievable, but it's something that you got to work at. You got to work with it every single day. It's just like a good relationship. You got to work on that thing because people change. We change physically, our minds, our emotions. Sometimes they just change, right? But we've got to work on it. If we see the vision, we know that vision, we've taken it to heart. We've got to be, we know the vision. We've got to be courageous. We've got to be our own heroes. Instead of a bad manager, instead of being a bad leader of your life, be an hero. Instead of a bad manager, instead of being a bad leader of your life, be your own hero. So, how do we establish So the question remains, how do we establish work-life harmony? Now, if you're taking notes, we have to know. So how do we establish work-life harmony? We have to start with our values. Our values are our non-negotiables, meaning these are the things that I must have in my life to be successful. These are the things that are important to me for me to function well. For example, I know one of my main values is my relationship with God. I need God. I'm not one of these folks that, oh, I did it all in my own strength. No, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. In fact, most of the things that I've done in my life was because God told me to do it. Just like this podcast, just like speaking publicly, even being a leader. Most of my leadership positions, people be gunning to be a leader, to get a title. That was not me. Not at all. Most of my leadership positions, people asked me to do it. And I went to God in prayer. He's like, I need you to do this. This is my will for you. This is the assignment that I have for you to do. Even, I didn't mention it, but I am a minister of the gospel. I never thought that I would be a minister at a church, on a church staff. But that's what I am. And I love it. I feel like that's something that I've been called to do. But I'm going to tell you, you asked me 10 years ago if that would have been in my life, I would have said no, because quite honestly, I didn't even like ministers that much. And that's another story for another day. But our values are so important, or determining our values is so important to establishing a life of work-life harmony. Now, here's one statement. If you are taking notes, I want you to write this down, or I need you to take a screenshot or whatever. I need you to screen video record this next statement. When we know our values, we can set up priorities. When we know our priorities, we can set boundaries. When we know our boundaries, we can make a schedule that makes appropriate time for our values. I'm going to say it again. When we know our values, we can set priorities. When we know our priorities, we can set boundaries. And when we know our boundaries, we can make a schedule that prioritizes our values. And honestly, it's all about time. It is all about a time game. We make time for the things that really are important to us. We make time, or we need to make time for those things to help lift us up, to give our life meaning and value. And the reason why you are feeling so stressed, you are feeling so frustrated, you're living in a state of unhealthiness. And the reason you are so frustrated, you're feeling so tired, you're feeling so overwhelmed, you feel like you are not well, is because you're prioritizing things that are not a part of your values. For example, one of my values, wait, your values can consist of, like me, your relationship with God, your family, your relationship with your friends, even your job or your profession. For many of us, I find meaning in what I do. I find meaning in my assignment. I don't even call it a job, I call it an assignment. Now here's the hard thing. Now, if you feel like you're just going to a job and there's no meaning in it, you need to get on your knees and you need to pray to the Lord. Like, Lord, am I supposed to be where I'm at right now? And you've got to be and you've got to be courageous enough to wait for that answer and accept it, and then make those moves if you need to. I know it's easier said than done, but it's a decision. So going back to values, write those things down. Once you've established your values, then you want to set your priorities. Like, for example, if I know that the relationship with my family is a value, I'm going to prioritize things or time that I spend with my family. I'm going to prioritize sitting together as a family at dinner. I'm going to prioritize like a family game night. I'm going to prioritize having conversation and being together. Once you have those priorities, you got to set boundaries. And you got to be strong in your boundaries. Now, I don't know if you like me. I feel like when fires are started, I have to be the one to put them out. I got in the past, I would jump to everybody else's emergency on top of doing what I was supposed to do in my life, right? And in the past, I said yes to a lot of things I should have said no to because I had poor boundaries. I was a little bit of a people pleaser. But I found all that people pleasing and all that saying yes to things God did not want me to say yes to was causing me to live a life. But I realized having those poor boundaries was causing me to have poor health. It was causing me to have poor self esteem because I was saying yes to a lot of things. God was like, why do you even say yes to that? Say no. Basically, I was doing too much, doing entirely too much. So when you set priorities, so when you put I want you to actually imagine that boundary being like a wall. The last episode, I talked about just the walled cities back in the biblical days. So that boundary should protect everything that's inside. Again, going to the example of your family. If having a relationship with your spouse, your kids, your whoever in your who's in your, your family, if that is a value, you've got to protect that time. You've got to protect that relationship. And ultimately, that boundary means protecting time with those loved ones. If one of your values is entrepreneurship, you've got to have protected time around that business. That means that you're getting things. Also, another example, like I said, that I value my relationship with God. So I have protected time around our relationship. I get up in the morning, I'm praying, I'm reading my word. I've set that boundary. If I'm not going to do anything that day, that's what I'm going to do. Am I perfect? No. Do I get it most of the time? Yes, because it has become a vital necessity. My time with God in the morning is a vital necessity to the functioning of my day. So once you have those priorities in order, you can get your schedule together. Now, I'm not saying neglecting those things at work or even some of the minor things that are happening in your life, the minor responsibilities, you can schedule that in. But when you're making your schedule, you're prioritizing your values. That means that means that during those 7 days, during that week, you're making time for something that helps your values. Now I hear somebody saying, well, Dr. Lauren, I just don't have time. Now I hear somebody saying, well, Dr. Lauren, I just don't have time to fit in some of those special things I want to do with my family. Some of those things I want to do to help grow my business. Some of those things that I want to do to make me a better leader. And my answer to that is, are you sure? Have you looked at what you do throughout the day? Can you pull up on your phone and look at your social media time? Like flat out. I think we waste a lot of time throughout our days. I think we waste a lot of time throughout our days doing frivolous stuff, doing things that don't help any of our values. And we got to be real with ourselves. And if we don't have that time, where are we spending that time? If it's not social media or anything like that, what are you prioritizing that is not a part of your value system? This is a time of self assessment. Let's be real with ourselves. We can't change what we don't acknowledge. As I close, I know that I have struck a nerve with some folks. I know some of you are like, man, I'm a bad manager of my life. You might even be a good leader for everybody else, but for your own life, you're under bad management. But you can change and correct that today. I want you to go back and just re-listen to this podcast and even the practical items, quite honestly. Establish your values, and when you look at your values, establish those priorities. And basically, priority equals time. What are those things that you need to do to help support your values? And then when you get that time and those things you do within that time, you set boundaries around those priorities. And boundaries look like a strong schedule. And you got to pay attention to the schedule, naturally do the schedule, write it down. We have all this technology to help ourselves out to keep that schedule together. Now, this might be different for folks because it is very administrative, but you have to go the extra mile and do things that you have not done before. Organize your life so you can live a life of health and wellness, the life that God has destined you to have. God don't want you stressed, baby. God do not want you frustrated because of the things that you're doing and the things that you're not doing. So don't be a bad manager of your life. Be a good manager. You a great God has made you to be a great leader, not just of others, but of yourself. So if this podcast has helped you today, drop me a comment below, like and share. And you can follow me also on Instagram and TikTok. It's underneath Dr. Lauren Carroll or Dr. Carroll, Lauren Carroll. Yeah, it's one of those. And then also let me go ahead if you are interested in having a speaker or anything. Some of my speaking information is on www.drlaurencarroll.com. And on there, you will also have access to a free 5-day devotional about creating a mindset for wellness. All right, guys, it was wonderful kicking it with you today, and see you next time.